Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. I've never written about my near-death experience before, so I suppose the best format is to write it as remembered. According to my parents, I was almost 4 years old at the time. I remember getting out of bed the day it happened. I also recall eating breakfast and then asking my father if I could go swimming. His response was no. He was watching a game on the TV. I went into my room for a few minutes and then asked him again. He said no once more. I continued to play after the other kids had gone to school. I inquired once more. "Oh, fine. Leave me alone," he said. I took this as a yes and changed into my suit before climbing the ladder into the above-ground pool. Canoga Park, California was the location of the pool. The pool was a comfortable temperature because the outside temperature was moderate. I was tired of swimming and wanted to get out of the pool. At this point, I realized that the water level was too low for me to reach the pool's rim. There was no ladder installed on the inside of the pool to exit, only one outside to enter. I could have gotten out if the water level had been where it was supposed to be, but I couldn't because it wasn't. The pool had no flotation devices, and the water level was up to the top of my head when I stood on the bottom. I had to swim constantly to catch my breath. I yelled and yelled and yelled from every location I could think of, and no person heard me. I began conserving energy by standing in the center and rising for air only when necessary. I would occasionally yell for help when I came up for air. After what seemed like hours of this, I remember yelling, "God, anyone, please help me," and sinking back into the water. Then, while underwater, I heard a very clear voice say, "Take a deep breath." I jumped above the water, took a breath, and then went back under. "No, take a deep breath underwater," said the voice. When I thought I couldn't do it, the voice responded with, "Trust me." As a result, I took a deep breath of the water. I recalled the weight of the water entering my lungs. Then I turned to look down at the pool, garage, house, and yard. Yes, I'm out of the pool, I thought. Then I was turned. I don't know how to describe it, so that I was facing one way and then another. I don't recall turning, but I know I was facing the opposite direction. In front of me was a very bright, white, yet highly colored loving light, with hundreds of thousands of silhouetted people between the light source and me, very similar to the end of the movie Ghost. As I approached the swarm of silhouettes, I was met by 12 people plus one at the wall. The wall appeared to be, as best as I can describe it, a wall of fog that was only one droplet or particle thick, with each droplet bouncing off other droplets and extending off into the darkness. This was clearly a barrier or wall between two locations. I stretched my arms out and both of my hands went through the wall. At this point, I recognized the person who was not the same as the other 12 people present at the wall. "Go back. You have something to do," said this one special person, pushing them back out. Even though I wanted to stay, I knew I couldn't. The next thing I remember is looking down at my body and the ambulance and a man crouched next to me saying, "Please, don't let him die." And that was the last thing I remember of that day. To make matters more complicated, my parents were divorced at the time. My father was granted custody of me after remarrying. Following this incident, the courts returned me to my mother, so I only had my mother's account of the event for years. That changed when I contacted my father around the age of 12 and asked him what he remembered after several visits. When I mentioned the drowning incident, he turned pale because I had mom's account before dad's. I'll write what I recall her saying years ago. Her and my father's memories of the event have evolved over time, but my knowledge and memories of the event have not changed. My mother stated that she was dropping off food at the house when she noticed the ambulance driving away. The officers on the scene informed her that I had died, so they escorted her to the hospital in a police car and followed the ambulance. Because I was dead, the ambulance drove without lights or sirens and parked near the emergency entrance. My mother had arrived at the back of the ambulance by the time they opened the doors. When they opened the door, I said, "Hi, Mommy," to their surprise. Then, there was nothing. I recall her telling me this years ago. Now, as for my dad, this is the kicker. Dad told me that he went looking for me after the football game. I had no idea what kind of game he was watching. He claimed to have looked everywhere. Dad expressed his frustration at not being able to locate me. It was as if someone had yelled the word pool and then hit him in the head with it. Dad claimed to be able to hear, see, and feel the word pool. He dashed out and discovered my body at the bottom of the pool, not floating. Dad then threw my body over the pool's edge and climbed out himself. He carried me to the porch by my feet and dialed the operator, who gave him the fire department's phone number. Dad called and waited for help to arrive. He made no attempt to resuscitate me. The paramedics who arrived attempted resuscitation for more than 15 minutes, but there were no signs of life. My body was then placed in the ambulance, and my father stated that he climbed in with me. This was when I found out who the crouched individual was. He stated that on the way to the hospital, I began choking or breathing, but he was unable to contact the ambulance's cab. Both attendants were in the front cab at the time. So aside from my father, the first time any of them knew I was alive was when they opened the back door of the ambulance. This was all he remembered. His memories of the event have since changed. He stated that he does not recall saying what I overheard. "God, please don't let him die." Before the NDE, the most noticeable difference was that I would constantly talk. The only understandable words I said after the NDE were, "Hi, Mommy." After that, I was told I didn't speak for years. It took me until about 8th grade to be able to speak clearly, and I still have to think about it. There were several rules or laws that were imprinted on my mind. Some of them include, I understand that suicide is wrong, especially now that I am aware of the rule. I am aware that there is a God. Our energy does not die when our bodies die. I am aware that evil forces exist and should not be ignored. At the wall, I met 12 people and one other. I did not put the name of Jesus to this one until I heard the NDE of Betty Jean Eddy. She claimed to have met Jesus 12 times. When I heard this part of her story, it really hit home with me. I still refer to this person as +1 so that my memories of the event are not tainted. After all, if this person wanted me to know his name during the NDE, he would have told me. I'm sure he knew I'd find out later. I'm aware that no one alive has ever seen God's face. Once you pass through the barrier, you're not permitted to return, at least not in a way that you could remember or recount. I know God is always present. God's assistance influenced my decisions. I recently saw a program about Einstein's general theory of relativity, E = mc². This program made me realize that everything we see or feel is stored light, and not just regular light, but light squared. This is, I believe, the same light that I saw on the other side of the wall. I also know that God loved us so much that he entered time in the only way possible. This was accomplished through his son Jesus. Even the best theologians and I can't answer how, why, or when God created everything. I know I haven't done anything illegal, harmful, or bad that I would have done if I hadn't had the NDE memory. Do unto others as you would like to be done to you. I recently told a suicidal friend about my near-death experience. H asked how I knew it wasn't just my brain that was depleted of oxygen. I explained I heard a voice before my body was at any risk of dying. I told him I could have kept breathing like this for hours, but I listened to the voice. This distinction between my NDE and other NDEs he has or has heard about convinced him that the other NDEs are more than likely accurate accounts of real events rather than just a brain starved of oxygen. My NDE account prevented him from doing so. I searched for and found your website. It is worth my time to write this story if it helps even one other person.